training and knowledge to be experts at something. Silicon Valley is called Silicon Valley because it had to do with silicon, and I don't know exactly how that started, but in Silicon Wadi, you had a bunch of people who had enemies all around them and a government and a military service that paid for a lot of education and high-tech education, right? And then it paid for a bunch of things, right? So one of that is that, but the other thing is under that particular environment, and California has that, like where the miners, when we went out mining for gold, it has a kind of a thing. And Silicon Valley also has this like welcoming of strangers when we need to make new friends. But the military service has something really specific, which is we really, really trust each other. We really, really trust each other. And the crypto people do too. I recently went to Dark Prague. I mean, these guys who've developed Ethereum together, we were in the trenches together. I know I can trust your code. I know I can trust you with the multi-sig. So a bunch of people who were in certain circumstances together, which caused them to have a high level of trust. So what that allows is that if you're looking for a co-founder, you call your buddy and you're like, hey, we did that together. Would you do this together? And you're like, yeah, all right, I'll try it out with you because I trust you, right? So that was the technical side, right? Which I think we have in the Regen OS to some degree. To some degree, we also have a little bit of suspicion, but we know who we want to work with, right? The second thing that happened is the first one struck it rich, right? I'm just going to call it the first one struck it rich. Maybe it was the first two, right? And the Ethereum ecosystem, that's really obvious. All of a sudden, we have money. Now we've got money in the hands of one of these people who trusts the other 10 people. And the one of those other 10 people says, I've got this great idea and I just need this much money to start it. And the guy who was in the trenches with him, either literally or figurative, is like, I got 10 grand to spare or 50 grand to spare. Sure. Go ahead, give it a shot because I trust you. I know you're going to pay me back if it works out. And if it doesn't, I love you anyway. You're my brother, right? And that creates the capital. It doesn't follow the pattern. If I look at both crypto and Silicon Wadi, which are the ones that I really know, it doesn't follow the pattern that you're saying. It follows a completely other pattern. And if I look at crypto, which is really small, so I really understand it a little bit better, even though the other one I was part of for a very long time, it fragments, right? You know who you can't trust also, like that guy, I'm never going to trust him again. And it fragments into different groups, and a large group of the people get completely sold out, right? Which again, you can see that in all of the examples I give. Like the people with the most money sell out to become a new elite. Either a new elite or they try to join the existing elite. And I had an opportunity, I had a friend who was working at a hosting company that worked with big high-tech companies. And she's like, oh, do you want to go to the Red Room? And I'm like, Red Room? I didn't know there's a Red Room. And they were in Manhattan. And all the clubs that are really fancy have a red room, and you can only get in there with, like it's whatever it is, $500 a drink or whatever it is in the red room, and all their hostesses back there and whatever. And I'm like, sure, I'd like to. I've never, I'm not going to get invited to a red room any other way, but by somebody who works at that company, right? And so she's my cousin. We go back there, and it's like, and I run into somebody I know from the Israeli high-tech scene, who's a CEO of, it's like his third company. And I run into him back there and I'm just like, right? Like, you know what I mean by the red room, like, everybody. And it was really hard being back there because my cousin, because she works at one of the companies that buys the services from the red room, she has to be nice to these guys who are hitting on her. It was horrible. It was like this horrible experience because you have to be nice to these people, like, even though it's like really inappropriate. It was just like this horrible, disgusting thing. But I could see that this CEO of a company that came from like another country had bought his way into the new elite, right? And within crypto, there's an elite, and some of those people, again, you don't want to talk about some of these people, but like they buy their way into, like the whole, what was it called? Like this whole Sam Bankman thing was about this guy bought himself into the existing elite by getting rich through crypto. And so some people will buy themselves into the existing elite, and some people will create a separate elite and stuff like that. And that's what happens to most of the money when these things happen. Now, we can really see it very hard in the refi space. If you look at what the refi organizations have, most of them don't have money. They don't, because they're outside of that elite that got the money. And that's quite shocking and upsetting to look at, but it's the case. Right. So this, right, the hypothesis, we're going to all get together, we're going to build a narrative, and somehow the money is going to come. It's not the pattern I see. Now, I could be wrong, but it's not the pattern I see.
So, and there are a lot of things there. First, let me start with, I think crypto is a really amazing warning case of, and to me, the message, I'm not saying that would be totally wrong, but it's happened before. Moses came down from the mountain. He just left the people alone for a little while. So somebody needs to smash the tablets on top of crypto's heads. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's a perfect example of technology without deeper values just gets succumbed by the game A, the worst of the extractive, right? Technology is a digital technologies today are a massive multiplier of whatever behaviors we choose to multiply, or almost any kinds of behaviors. And if we don't direct it, then we end up, the people who, it is a battle for the soul of humanity. So crypto is a perfect example of what happens if you don't tie in. And the technologists thought that decentralization, why? Because decentralized is better. Why? Because it's decentralized. The circular agreement argument, it was not enough. It was not enough of a value to keep the technology from being sucked into the worst tendencies of the existing system and the worst tendencies of nouveau riche. So that's definitely why embedding it into the thing. One thing that's,
but again,
one thing that I really want to emphasize is I am not claiming that I have answers.
Right.
What I would like to think though is I have interesting questions, and the fact that a lot of people have jumped on indicates to me that these are interesting questions worth exploring. I have some ideas that, investment narratives get created by people talking about it, papers being published, conferences happening, but I don't know. But I am sure that the question of how do we create an investment narrative and an umbrella that will funnel much larger significant funds to technology for building a better future is an important set of questions to engage with. Also, this year I went to the Systemic Investment Summit in London at the start of the year, and it was a bunch of people talking about these kinds of ideas, doing work, and I don't know, there was something like 2 trillion assets under management represented. It was serious money, very serious money. And what I took away from that is they're looking in the right directions. They have access to significant capital, which in today's day and age is hundreds of billions. And I don't think they have the tools, and they don't have the idea of investing technology into technology as a way of achieving systemic change. Right? You invest in water or agriculture. All of those are hyper important. But I think if we create an umbrella narrative of there is such a thing as technology for good and it's important, then we can siphon off a couple $100 million from those hundreds of billions of systemic investing, impact investing, towards the kinds of technologies that over the last 20, 30 years, because it's been 20, 30 years of experimenting with alternative technologies, we know point to the direction of what is needed.
Yeah, that's a hypothesis. It might be right. I want to say two things about that. First of all, I wouldn't be as critical of crypto as you are, because crypto people donate a lot of money. Crypto people percentage wise tend to donate more than normies because they there's a weird relationship to money, and it's like it came to me magically, I want to give it away. And so there is a percentage of money in the crypto world that is given away to good projects. Now, what they think is good might be different than what you think is good or whatever, but I do think that they're a generous crowd, and some percentage of that money, like I said, the large percentage gets corrupted, which is the pattern I just described. The small percentage goes in there. It may or may not be that if you get a whole bunch of Regen OS people together and they create this narrative and they get 200 million or a billion, or it may be that the same pattern will repeat itself, where most of the money gets corrupted and some small percentage goes to projects, and it may be that the way that you create it is something new. I can tell you that it's being created in a manner that is a little more centralized than it needs to be, but that's okay too. Well, there's a set of topics that have been predetermined, and the goal of creating this narrative has been predetermined, right? So those are predetermined goals of the Regen OS group, which have been created by the new elite in the group and not discussed yet. But maybe they will be discussed. And I'm not saying they're wrong or anything like that. Like, I do think leadership is important. You say, look, this is what I'm up to, who wants to come, and lots of people come. That also is a way of creating consensus, right? Nobody had to come. It is problematic, though. The second thing I want to say is it's problematic when you start to, like, once the money comes in, right? Like creating, who gets it, right? That's the problem. Like, let's say you do get that money and distributing it. So yeah, your hypothesis may be correct. And it may be that by creating this narrative, it will bring in funds. And the other thing is, I'm already pointing out in my first point, is that like some of that money is coming in by people who already have good connections and already can get the money in. This is a group, okay, I'm going to say it out loud. This is a group of people who didn't raise the money yet, because the people who did raise the money didn't come to that meeting. The people who actually know how to raise the money didn't come to that meeting because they raised the money and they're doing the projects that they think are best and trickling that down through, right? So, like the whole thing about where the money goes is, it's really a big, it's like, that's how it looks, right? The person who raised the money decides where the money goes. Is that good? I don't know, but it is.
Самое красивое место, это Грабл. Я даже не знаю, может быть, там я, может быть, даже сам видел свои места, но бачу. Да, в общем,
I would say
самое
that
красивое
I am
место.
flattered
Я даже не знаю, может быть, там я, может быть,
because
сам
you're
видел свои
evaluating
места,
the whole project by criteria of a project that is much, much more advanced than we actually are. I had this idea early in spring. I threw up 2 articles on LinkedIn. I got some people to talk about it, and then suddenly this thing which I inspired other people to make happen, and 150 people showed up to have a conversation about it. That's all it is, right?
That's all it is.
And for me, you're right. I don't know whether any of my hypotheses are true. The way I have started to, or the way I test my ideas these days, is I throw them out into the world in concentric circles. You know, I start with my friends or the people I know who won't judge me too much, and then bigger and bigger, and then, you know, after a few months I'll post it on LinkedIn, right? So for me, it's an invitation to an exploration, and the question is, do people think it's something interesting and worth talking about? And it seems so, yes. There was a lot of in-depth, in-person conversations in Czechia, and there were a bunch of organizations there that had gotten funded. So people seem to think that it's important to start talking about how all of these little experiments start interoperating and what technologies could be shared. One thing which I think, and there's a huge number of things to be learned from the crypto world, one important thing I think is crypto has learned and understood of what it takes to launch a foundational technology into the world. So I don't follow crypto, but I have enough friends in it that I always end up looking at something, and there is the new, what is it called, the Monad blockchain that's launching. It's a level 1 blockchain. So they're launching a foundational technology into the world. They raised $250 million. They're starting with 250 million. And that's in the range of what I think it takes to launch a basic technology on which you want lots of people to build things on. And that's one thing that I want to put into this regenerative world is for people to really start thinking bigger. Not 100,000 crowdfund from my friends to develop some software. I think the time for little experiments, and Holochain was a great example. For some reason, they seem to have stalled technologically, and we've been waiting for many years. They haven't really launched at scale. Also, I think they overemphasize basic technology, which is maybe what was needed when they started 8-10 years ago. And I've been following them since the Meta Currency project, so I know where they came from. I think what we need to do now, or what I really want to catalyze, is starting with the conversation of what are the apps that we imagine, and working back from that, what are the foundational technologies that we need to assemble out of the pieces, which, like you say, people have been working on for the last 10 years or 20 years, right? So, yeah, bunch of different hypotheses there. I don't know which are true, but Monad is got $250 million to launch a level 1 blockchain. I think that's at the level. Maybe it's 50 million, maybe it's 500 million. I don't know, but it's not 100,000. It's not 1 million. And we need to start thinking bigger in the regen space tech, in the regen tech space.
I totally agree with you. I don't know if the way that crypto does it is transferable, because to me, I don't know how they got that money, but I suspect it was from friends who trust them, because that's how the Bros Club works, and that's my observation. But maybe you know something I don't know, right? That's what I described, is once you've got this Bros Club that has money inside of it, the bros keep giving each other money and the numbers go up. Right? Did they get money some other way than from other crypto bros?
I mean, at that level, the money comes from VCs, right? The
right,
money
but those are their brothers who made a lot of money at the previous crypto project. It's exactly the pattern I described. How they're launching these things with big money is the pattern I described. Some people got rich. They started investing their money in the next thing. They got richer. That's where Elon Musk is, and Peter Thiel and those people. And that's where the crypto bros are moving their way up that scale. That's what it looks like to me. But I could be wrong. That's what it looks like to me, is that they created their own ecosystem. When their ecosystem had more money, they put the money back into their ecosystem. And so that's different from going and pitching to an investor. That's putting more and more of the money you've got into the ecosystem.
So Elon, I mean, they don't print the money. They suck the money out from the world at large. Elon is a perfect example of a story-driven, right? There is no sane, rational analysis that could explain Tesla's stock price. It's the myth of Elon. He has created a massive narrative, mythical narrative around himself, which has enabled him to suck an amount of money from the world, which is